Boris out of Rathaus in Hamburg, and the final of this first FIDE World Cup. And what a final. Anatoly Karpov, the reigning world champion from the Soviet Union, playing against former world champion Boris Spassky. The rules, it's a two-leg final. They have to make all their moves in 1 hour each. So we have two two-hour games, and it looks as if they are just about ready to start this first ever World Cup final.
And it is Anatoly Karpov, the world champion, who has drawn white to start. Bill Hartston, you've been tipping Boris Spassky to win all the way through. Still confident?
I've never been confident, I've just been tipping him to win. I think he'll be happy to have black in the first game, because then he'll know what he has to do in the second game with white. He's played a Pietz defence here. It's also what John Nunn played against Karpov in the very first round of this tournament.
It is interesting as the tournament's gone on how the players have played their openings quicker and quicker for the most part.
Yes, I think they're really getting used to the time limit. Jan Timman told me that just before this game he took Boris Spassky out to lunch, and they had prepared a couple of openings, and Boris had a couple of beers and Karpov had one beer. Then Boris said he was tired and was going back to have a little sleep. So we'll see what he's prepared. It's still the same as the John Nunn game. Karpov always adopts this very quiet system. Just 2 pawns in the centre of the board, just quietly developing his pieces, waiting for black to react in the middle.
What are the basic sort of strategic ideas behind these openings?
Black tries to control the centre from a distance, first of all, and then fight back. Now, normally black will try to play his e-pawn to e5 to fight back in the centre. He's preparing to exchange his bishop for this knight, too. It's another theme to try to increase the other bishop's influence in the centre on the d-pawn.
And white's played bishop c1 to e3.
Supporting the d4 pawn.
Knight bishop 8 to c6 from Spassky. Queen d1 to d2 from Karpov.
So queen and bishop lined up on this diagonal, so maybe one day he'll think about exchanging bishops with bishop h6.
And now it's Boris Spassky black to play.
So I have the problem about my plan. What must I do at this moment? I have an idea to play sometime e7, e5, fighting for the d4 square. But in this case, probably before this move, I have to take on f3. But anyway, rook e8 is a good move, because white don't have a possibility to play e5 or d5 at this moment. And I have some kind of flexibility. Yes, so this is a good move. Okay, rook e8.
This is new version of well-known variation. Normally black played e5, but now they are waiting with e5, and they're going to play e5, then take on f3, knight d4, and after bishop takes d4, e takes d4, queen takes d4, black has knight takes e4. So white must play something in the center to prevent this threat. If I play rook to d1, it doesn't help, because I have in this long variation pawn on e4 weak. So I must play rook to e1, but which rook? Rook f to e1 in order to have another rook on d1. Rook f to e1.
Okay. In case if I play now e5, white can play d5, bishop takes knight, bishop takes bishop, knight d4, bishop takes knight, ed, e takes d, knight b5. So I would like to play first a6 to prevent this jump of the knight to b5. So, okay, a6.
And still not advancing this e-pawn.
It's very subtle the way Spassky's playing this opening. John Nunn, in exactly the same opening variation, dispensed with these moves rook e8 and the pawn on a6 and played e5 immediately. Now, in that game, for those with long memories, White advanced his pawn to d5 after e5. The pawn on d5 attacked this knight, which then retreated to e7. Now, what Spassky's trying to do is play something much more ambitious, involving exchanging this knight on f3 with his bishop, playing e5, and if his knight gets kicked back by White playing d5, to advance the knight to d4. That's why he's trying to weaken this square. And now there was one variation where White captures the knight on d4, Black takes back with a pawn that's come to e5, and then the White knight comes to b5 and wins a straggly pawn on d4. It's a long way from this position, but he's played this little a6 move just to stop the knight coming to b5 in about 5 moves' time in that variation. Very deep.
And it's Anatoly Karpov, White, to play.
Black is still waiting. And now it's not very good for White to play d5 because bishop takes on f3. And then knight goes to e5. Of course, White can play e5, then d takes e5, knight takes e5, bishop takes e2, rook takes e2. This is a little better for White, but maybe it's not enough. So if I play rook a to d1, Black plays e5, of course. Then I can't play d5 because of bishop takes f3 again. And then if I play, I just take on e5 and I have a little better position. Yes, rook a to d1.
My opponent's still waiting. But anyway, my plan connected with e7, e5. But in this case, first I must take on f3. So bishop takes f3 first.
Bishop takes f3 back.
Okay, I play e5.
It was expected. Now I can't play d5. I must take on e5.
Yeah, now I have two possibilities. If I play knight takes e5, after this, White has a very simple move, bishop e2, intending to play f3, bishop f2, and White has a better game. So I must take with the pawn. Pawn takes pawn.
This is symmetrical structure of pawns. White has slight advantage because of two bishops. And knight on c3 is not so good. So I must play with this knight to e2 or to a4. To a4 is more active because Black played already a6, and b7 and a6 is not very good when I have knight on a4 and then maybe I come to c5. If I play knight to e2, then I play c3 and I have no squares for my knight. I need to play then to c1, so it's more active to play knight to a4.
This is typical position for Karpov, because pawn structure is determined, and he's trying to limit the possibilities of my pieces, and at the same time to improve the position of his pieces. After that, of course, White have to think about how to create a weakness, especially in queen's wing. So I understand this very well, but I also have some problems how to get an active play, some counterplay. And it's extremely difficult to do with the knights, especially when my pawn knights can be limited. So, but anyway, I would like to preserve queens, so I play first queen e7. That's quite logical.
c2, c3.
That's just keeping black's knight out of the game, stopping it coming to d4.
b7, b6.
It's very interesting how Karpov seized on this little a6 move as a potential weakness in black's position, trying to bring his knight from a4 to c5.
Queen d2, e2.
Of course, it can't go to c5 anymore. Black's advanced the b-pawn.
Knight c6, d8.
But the b-pawn's now left the a-pawn undefended by a pawn, so Karpov switched his queen onto that diagonal to attack the pawn.
b2, b3.
And White's just advanced a pawn to let his knight back into the game. His knight's intending to come back to b2 one day.
d8, e6.
Now some counterplay for Spassky. He wants to bring the knight to f4. Coming forward.
g2, g3.
No, he's not going to be given the chance. The pawn comes up to stop the knight advancing.
h7, h5.
Maybe some more counterplay on this side. What black would really like to do in this position is to exchange the black squared bishops, because his bishop is hampered by his own pawn. So perhaps he's thinking of king to h7 and bishop to h6, just to get rid of those bishops.
Knight a4, b2.
And this knight's continuing on its reroute.
And Boris Spassky black to play.
So I have some problems here, because it's very difficult for me to find an active plan here. What can I do? White has some threats, for example, knight c4 or knight d3 or even queen c4. But my knights well placed, but unfortunately they don't have a good prospects for the future. My bishop on g7 is bad. So this is difficult for me to work out the plan. Yeah, okay, first I play b5 just to prevent the way of white knight to c4. Okay, b5.
I didn't expect b5 because it makes some weaknesses on the queen side. I was expected a5 or knight c5 or king h7 to try to exchange bad bishop with bishop h6. But now I can play, of course, knight c4. I was going to play, and I can play with the queen on the queen side, but at the same time I have a very nice square on d3 and then b4 and then maybe c6. So first of all I attack pawn on e5 with knight d3.
Oh yeah, this is very unpleasant. I completely forgotten about the possibility which white has after knight d7. They can play knight b4, trying to occupy d5 square with a knight. And also the threat is very unpleasant, knight c6. So what to do? Yeah, this is very unpleasant. The worst thing of my situation that I have to ruin the position of my pieces with myself. So I lose a lot of time at the moment, but I cannot find a good construct solution of the problem. Also very unpleasant that the pawn on e5 is hanging, so how to protect? I wouldn't like to remove my knight from f6. So what to do? Okay, I play knight d8, but I'm getting very pessimistic about my position now. Okay, knight d8.
Knight d8. I expected this. It was maybe only move. Now white has the same problem with the white bishop as black has with the black bishop. I have no perspective on f3 with this bishop. And if I play bishop g2, then probably I would play in the future f4, and also I go with this bishop to h3, and then I can occupy c5 with knight, and it would be very good for white. If I play bishop g2, he can play knight g4, but then I have temp with bishop c5, and then I play f3, and it's very good for white. So I play bishop g2.
Now I want to take the control over square d5. So I want to play c6.
c6. Now it's something like in Spanish party. And if I occupy immediately c5 square with the bishop, he plays queen e6, and I have no time for bishop h3. And if I play bishop c5, queen e6, f4, then he can play knight d7 and just keep the position. First of all, I must protect my pawn on e4 in order to play bishop h3. So f3.
Yeah, the position is unpleasant, but maybe it's not so bad for me. Yeah, but something happens. I start to lose my way. Yeah, okay, I play knight b7.
He could not prevent bishop h3 with queen e6 because of knight c5. Now if I play knight b4, he plays simple queen c7 and then c5, or immediately c5, and there is no sense to exchange knights on d5. No, maybe it's good. Maybe it's good to exchange knights on d5 and to take with the rook. But he wouldn't play c5 immediately. He would play queen to c7 and then a5. So my plan was good. Bishop h3.
It's very interesting the way Karpov there has been carrying out this little plan of bringing his bishop from f3 to g2 to h3 with the necessary pawn move, pawn to f3 to protect the e-pawn. He's just been carrying out that plan for the last 4 moves. And then he suddenly saw the idea of going back to the queenside play with knight to b4. Spent a long time calculating this knight to b4, attacking the c6 pawn, working out several defences for black, deciding it wasn't dangerous, and then saying, oh, OK, I'll go back to my plan and just improve my position. It's very characteristic of his play, the combination of slightly strengthening moves, just improving his badly placed pieces, but keeping on the lookout for real killers, forcing moves.
Spassky black to play.
Yeah, the position is getting more and more unpleasant for me because of lack of activity. I don't like this threat knight b4. Also, white has some other possibilities to play simple queen f2 to take under the control c5 square, or even double the rooks on d line. Okay, I play a5.
There is no threat on the queen side, but now the pawn structure of black position is becoming weak. Should I play immediately a4 or just double my rooks on d line? Both plans are very good, but maybe it's better to make the queen side more weak. If I play a4, he has no b4 because I play rook c1, or I take first on b4. After a4, he must exchange pawns and gives me B line also. So I play A4.
Yeah, this is a winning move. Strategically, my position is lost already. So my last moves were very poor, very bad. Yeah, what can I do? No activity at all. Everything, all my pieces stand so bad that scandal. And I lost already a lot of time. What kind of resistance can I do here? I don't see any chances. Okay, first I take on A4.
I take on A4.
Okay, knight H7 with some threats.
Trying to regroup his knight to G5 maybe.
Queen E2, F2.
And queen and bishop lining up on this diagonal.
Rook E8, D8.
Spassky under severe pressure here.
Bishop E3 to B6.
Bishop comes to attack the rook.
Rook D8 to D6.
And the rook moves out of attack.
Knight, bishop 3, B3 to C5. Knight H7, G5.
That's first attacking move for a long time, attacking the bishop.
Bishop H3 to G2.
Which is happy to retreat.
Bishop G7 to F8.
Still trying to get some work for this bishop.
And it's Karpov to play.
This is almost winning position. But if I exchange rooks, I have no time to get D line with the other rook. And the black is threatening to exchange rooks and to take my knight on C5. If I take on B7, I still have some advantage. Maybe I miss something. I must keep all pieces on the board, otherwise I make my advantage less. But if I play rook D to B1, I have threat knight takes B7 and bishop C5, and if he plays in this case rook F6, I still have knight takes B7, queen takes B7 and bishop E3. It's very strong. So I forced black to play knight D8 after rook B1.
Yeah, this is very unpleasant. I have only one move. Knight D8.
And now it is time to push my pawn in the center, to attack his E5 pawn, because he went back with the bishop to F8. If I play F4 now, black has no knight E6 because of F takes E5 and I win exchange. So he must play rook F6 or knight H7. If he plays knight H7, then I can play even knight B3 to attack A5 pawn and threat bishop C5 also. If he plays rook F6, I just play knight D3 and I have all threats in this case. F4.
Yes, very unpleasant. My pieces are disconnected. How I can get any counter chances, I don't know. So, okay, first I'd like to play rook F6 anyway.
Now there is a pin on F line. If I play with the queen to E3, it's good, but then he has time for knight G to E6 after exchange pawns. So I must play back with my very good situated knight in order to win a temp and to force him the exchange, the pawn exchange. Knight to D3.
Ah, very strong. All white pieces, excellent position. My game is lost. So how I can resist now? Okay, pawn takes pawn.
Pawn takes pawn.
No chances for getting any activity. Very bad. Okay, knight e6.
Now I play e5. He plays rook f5, and I play bishop e4. I win the exchange. But if I take rook immediately on f5 after knight g7, it's not so good because he takes back with the knight, and then he has all white squares on the king side. But I have time to wait and not to take rook immediately on f5 because rook is trapped. First I exchange bishops after e5, rook f5, bishop e4, knight g7, bishop c5. I exchange bishops and I play knight to c5, and then at the end I take rook e5.
Yes, this way white wins the quality. Maybe I can get some chances if white can take immediately on f5. Yeah, but anyway, position is very unpleasant. Okay, rook f5.
It's frightening the way Karpov plays positions like this, remorselessly increasing his hold from a very simple advantage. Now he's playing to surround this rook.
Bishop g2, e4.
And the bishop's attacking the rook, which can't go anywhere.
Knight e6, g7. Bishop b6, c5.
Now Karpov not taking the rook at once.
Queen e7 to e6.
Queen moves out of attack, and
Bishop
bishops are
c5
exchanged.
takes f8. King g8 takes f8. Knight d3, c5.
Knight attacking the queen,
Queen e6, e7.
which retreats.
Rook e1, d1. Rook f5 takes f4.
Oh, solved the problem of this rook taking a pawn.
Knight c5 to d7 check.
That's a clever little intermezzo, moving the knight away from where it was attacked.
Queen e7 takes d7. Rook d1 takes d7.
And this is a
Rook
strange
f4 takes f2.
way to exchange queens.
King g1 takes f2.
But good for Karpov, who's now the exchange ahead, rook for knight.
Knight g7, e6.
Rook for knight and pawn.
Rook d7 to d6. Rook a8 to c8, both very short of time. Rook b1, b6.
And Karpov trying
c6, c5.
to attack these two queenside pawns with his rooks.
Rook b6, b5. King f8, e7.
Black's knights just aren't manoeuvrable enough to defend them.
Rook b5 takes on a5.
There goes one pawn.
Rook c8, c7.
Rook trying to defend along the rank.
Rook d6, a6. f7, f5.
His only hopes to get these pawns moving.
e5 takes f6. En passant and check. King e7 takes f6. Rook a6 to
And
a7.
Karpov trying to exchange this only active black piece, the rook running away.
Rook c7 to c8. And this really is a total blitz. Spassky with practically no time at all. Karpov with about 2 minutes.
Spassky's trying to keep rooks on, but Karpov's insisted. They've exchanged a pair of rooks.
And the poor girl trying to keep up is just about managing, but I don't know if she's going to go much quicker.
One of Spassky's knights gone, exchanged for a bishop. Karpov's got an awfully dangerous passed pawn on the queen's side. That knight's no match for his rook.
The girl on the board has given up. We'll try and give you the position in just a minute if we can set it up on the computer. She's away behind.
Karpov has more time than Spassky too. It really looks very bad for Spassky, this. Really hoping for something on the king's side with his knight, but that passed pawn's killing him.
And Karpov not giving him a second of his time to think in. And Spassky resigns. And this, in fact, is the position that Spassky has just resigned, and you can see that pawn on the a5, certainly going to go through the queen. So that is the first game of this two-leg final to Anatoly Karpov, the world champion. Until the second leg next week, good night.